Three forbidden warrior rituals history tried to hide. History taught you about the Vikings, brutal raiders, long ships cutting through the North Sea mist, axes and fire. But here's what they never taught you in school. There was a ritual so gruesome that for 1,000 years, historians have argued about whether it was real or just a story the Vikings told to terrify their enemies. It was called the Blood Eagle. Here's how it worked. A victim was forced to his knees. His back was sliced open with a blade. His ribs were cracked from the spine, one by one, and pulled outward until they resembled blood-soaked wings. Then his lungs were pulled through the opening and draped over the exposed ribs. He was still alive for most of it. The sagas describe the victim's final moments. If he didn't scream, if he endured the full ritual in silence, he earned a place in Valhalla. Most didn't. Archaeologists have never found a skeleton that definitively proves the Blood Eagle happened. But the Vikings told the story constantly. They carved it into their poetry. They whispered it to their enemies before battle. The fear of the Blood Eagle did more damage than the ritual itself ever could. Think about that. A ritual so horrifying that just the story of it was a weapon. Now forget everything you just learned about ritualized brutality, because the Aztecs did something completely different, and in some ways, far worse. The Spanish called them the Flower Wars. Even the name sounds soft, deceptive. Here's what actually happened. Aztec warriors didn't go to war to kill. Killing an enemy in battle was considered wasteful, even shameful. An Aztec warrior who killed his opponent could be punished. Why? Because the Aztec Empire ran on a very specific fuel, human sacrifice. The gods demanded blood, specifically living human hearts cut from still-beating chests at the top of massive stone pyramids. And you couldn't just sacrifice anyone. The gods wanted warriors, strong, brave, worthy opponents, the kind of men you could only capture alive. So the Aztecs invented the Flower Wars, ritualized conflicts where the goal wasn't territory, wasn't conquest, wasn't anything a normal war is fought for. The goal was prisoners. Two armies would meet at a prearranged time and place. They would fight, not to kill, but to capture. A warrior proved his worth not by how many enemies he slaughtered, but by how many he dragged back alive to the temples. One wrong slash that killed instead of captured, you were disgraced. At the Templo Mayor in 1487, during the reign of Emperor Ahuitzotl, the Aztecs sacrificed an estimated 80,000 prisoners over 4 days. 4 days. The streets of Tenochtitlan ran red. The stench of blood and burning flesh hung over the city for weeks. And the warriors who were sacrificed? Many went willingly. They believed death on the sacrificial stone was the highest honor. A direct path to the afterlife reserved for warriors and women who died in childbirth. Here's what matters. A culture that looked at death not as something to avoid, but as something to be harvested. And now we come to the ritual history forgot completely. The one that terrified medieval crusaders so deeply, they wrote about it for centuries afterward. The Hashashins. You might know them as the assassins. Yes, the word assassin comes from their name. They were an Islamic sect that controlled a string of mountain fortresses across Persia and Syria in the 11th and 12th centuries. From these castles, they waged a war unlike anything the world had seen. They didn't have large armies. They didn't fight pitched battles. Their weapon was targeted assassination. Single warriors sent deep into enemy territory to kill one specific person, often a crusader lord or a rival Muslim ruler. And these warriors never tried to escape. They expected to die. This made medieval chroniclers ask a question that haunted them. What kind of training creates a man who doesn't fear death? The answer, according to those same chroniclers, was the Garden of Paradise. Here's how the story goes. Young recruits were brought to the mountain fortress of Alamut, the Eagle's Nest, deep in the Alborz Mountains. They were drugged, hashish, some sources claim, though the evidence is thin, and while unconscious, they were carried into a hidden garden built inside the fortress walls. When they woke up, they were in paradise, rivers of milk and honey, wine flowing from golden fountains, beautiful women, fruits that didn't exist in the desert below. Every earthly pleasure laid out before them. They were told this was a glimpse of the afterlife that awaited them. All they had to do to return here forever was follow the orders of one man, the old man of the mountain, Hashashin. After days in this garden, they were drugged again and carried back out. When they woke up in the real world, barren mountains, cold stone, the smell of iron and dust, the memory of paradise burned in their minds. They would do anything to go back. The Crusaders wrote about these men with a mix of horror and awe. Marco Polo himself described the garden when he passed through Persia a century later. Was any of it real? Historians still debate. The garden may have existed. The drugging may have been exaggerated. But here's what we know for certain. The Hashashins produced warriors who walked into certain death without hesitation. And the psychological mechanism, show a man paradise, then take it away, is terrifyingly effective. Hashashin ruled from Alamut for 35 years without ever leaving his chamber. He didn't need to. He had warriors who would die for a paradise they believed they had already touched. Let's bring this all together. 3 warrior cultures, 3 rituals that history textbooks either sanitize, dismiss as legend, or skip entirely. The Vikings and the Blood Eagle, a ritual so horrific we still can't prove it was real, but whose story alone was a weapon that traveled faster than any longship. The Aztecs and the Flower Wars, a culture that weaponized capture over killing, because death wasn't the end of the supply chain, it was the point. The Hashashins in the Garden of Paradise, a psychological ritual that turned the human desire for paradise into the deadliest recruitment tool the medieval world had ever seen. History buried these rituals for a reason. They don't fit the clean narrative. They make us uncomfortable. They remind us that human beings are capable of things that don't fit into a textbook sidebar. And here's the final truth. These rituals weren't barbaric in their own time. They were strategic. The Vikings used terror as a weapon. The Aztecs built an empire on captured warriors. The Hashashins turned psychology into a tool sharper than any blade. The history that makes you uncomfortable? That's the history worth knowing. If these hidden rituals blew your mind, hit the like button and subscribe. It would really help this channel as we uncover the warrior cultures they erased from history. Every week, another story they tried to bury.